Welcome to Mind Power. Ready to unlock the science behind lasting change? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most transformative books ever written on habits and self-improvement, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Discover how tiny, 1% improvements can compound into extraordinary results, and why it's not about big, dramatic changes, but about who you're becoming, one small habit at a time. Sparkles, if you're ready to build a better version of yourself, this video is for you. White right pointing backhand index, subscribe and hit the like button so you never miss an episode. New insights on mindset, growth, and psychology are coming your way every week. Let's grow together. Seedling. Part 1, The Fundamentals, Why Tiny Habits Make a Big Difference. The compound effect of small habits. Clear opens with a personal story. In high school, he suffered a severe head injury after being struck by a baseball bat during a game. His recovery took months, and doctors weren't sure he'd fully regain normal function. During that slow rebuilding process, he started restructuring his life through tiny, almost invisible habits, first fixing his sleep, then slowly rebuilding physical fitness, then building academic discipline. Over time, these micro improvements didn't just lead to recovery, they eventually made him a student athlete and one of the top students in the country. From this personal experience comes the book's central metaphor: habits work like compound interest on a savings account. Improving by just 1% a day seems insignificant in the moment, but compounded over time it produces exponential, not linear, growth. The reverse is also true: declining by 1% a day, repeated long enough, leads to collapse. The difference between good and bad habits isn't dramatic on any single day, it's about which direction the compounding is carrying you. The key takeaway: your current results are largely a reflection of accumulated habits, not one-off decisions. We tend to overvalue single big moments and undervalue the quiet repetition of small daily actions. The plateau of latent potential. One reason people abandon good habits is the gap between effort and visible results. Clear compares this to an ice cube sitting in a room as the temperature slowly rises. At -4, -3, -2, -1 degrees, nothing visibly happens, the ice stays solid. But at 0 degrees, it suddenly starts melting, even though the temperature had been rising steadily the whole time. Breakthrough moments are often the result of previously accumulated work that simply wasn't visible yet. This explains why people underestimate habits. They try a new behavior for a few days or weeks, don't see dramatic change, and conclude it isn't working, when in reality they stopped right before the tipping point. Forget about goals, focus on systems. Clear draws a key distinction between goals and systems. A goal is the result you want to achieve. A system is the collection of processes that lead you there. A coach's goal might be to win the championship, but the system is what the team does in training every single day. He raises several problems with over-focusing on goals. Winners and losers have the same goals. Every Olympic athlete wants gold. The goal doesn't separate the successful from the unsuccessful, the system does. Achieving a goal is only a momentary change. You solve the problem only at the moment you reach it. If the underlying system that caused the problem doesn't change, the result won't last. Someone who loses weight on a diet but returns to old eating patterns will simply regain it. Goals restrict happiness. "I'll be happy once I hit the goal" pushes satisfaction into the future and devalues the process itself. Goals conflict with long-term progress. Goal-oriented thinking encourages an all-or-nothing mindset. Once the goal is hit, motivation often disappears, their post-marathon slump effect. His conclusion: goals are useful for setting direction, but systems and processes are what actually drive progress. As he puts it, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. 3 layers of change and identity. Clear identifies 3 nested layers where behavior change can occur. 1. Outcome change, the most surface-level layer: losing weight, publishing a book, winning a tournament. 2. Process change, about habits and systems: a new gym routine, a meditation ritual. 3. Identity change, the deepest layer: beliefs, self-image, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Most people, when trying to change habits, start at the first layer: I want to lose 20 pounds, and Clear argues this is the wrong direction. It's far more effective to work backward, start by asking who you want to become, and build processes and outcomes from there. For example, there's a real difference between saying, "I'm trying to quit smoking" versus, "I'm not a smoker." The second statement comes from the identity of a non-smoker, not from a smoker who's white-knuckling restraint. That distinction makes the habit part of who you are, rather than a constant fight against yourself. Clear introduces identity-based habits. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, focus on who you want to become. Every small action is essentially a vote for a certain type of person. One workout won't make you an athletic person, but it's a vote for the identity, "I am someone who exercises." The more votes accumulate, the more firmly the new identity takes hold, and the more naturally the corresponding behavior becomes, because it no longer conflicts with your self-image. He also warns this mechanism cuts both ways. Identity can reinforce unwanted behavior too. If someone says, "I'm always late," or "I'm bad with money," they unintentionally strengthen that very identity through their future actions. Habits as the atoms of a system. Part 1 closes with the book's central metaphor, habits as atoms. An atom is a small unit that serves as the building block of something larger. Habits work the same way, small units that build up into much larger outcomes: productivity, health, relationships, wealth. Clear describes the habit loop, a universal four-step cycle underlying all behavior. Cue, the trigger that prompts your brain to initiate a behavior. Craving, the motivational force behind a habit, the desire to change your internal state. Response, the actual habit or action you perform. Reward, the end goal of every habit, satisfying the craving, while also teaching your brain that this behavior is worth repeating next time. This four-step loop becomes the foundation for the rest of the book. Clear builds his famous 4 laws of behavior change directly on top of it: make the cue obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying, and the inverse of each for breaking bad habits. Part 2, the first law, make it obvious. Part 2 dives deep into how habits get triggered, how to notice the cues that drive automatic behavior, and how to consciously redesign them. Habit scripts and awareness. Clear opens by explaining that most of what we do isn't the result of conscious decisions, it's automatic, learned responses to environmental cues. He cites research on amnesiac patients. Even after losing the ability to form new memories, these patients continued to display habitual behaviors. Their body remembered the habit even when their mind remembered nothing. This demonstrates that habits aren't stored in conscious memory but in deeper, automatic parts of the brain. From this comes the first practical tool, the habits scorecard. Clear suggests writing out a list of your daily behaviors and marking each one with a plus, good habit, bad habit, or equals, neutral. The goal isn't to change behavior immediately, it's simply to learn to notice it, to become an observer of your own automatic responses. As he puts it, awareness is the first step, because you can't improve a habit you don't notice. Implementation intentions. Next, Clear introduces the technique of implementation intentions, a formula. I will, behavior, at, time, in, location. Studies he cites show that people who make a specific plan, stating exactly when and where they'll perform an action, are far more likely to follow through than those with vague intentions like, I'll exercise more. Vague intentions are one of the main reasons habits fail to stick. People wait for a moment of inspiration, instead of designing a concrete cue for action in advance. Habit stacking. The next technique is habit stacking, based on a principle known as the Diderot effect. One action or acquisition often triggers a chain of related ones. The formula. After, current habit, I will, new habit. The idea is to use an already established, automatic habit as the cue for a new one. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. This way, the new habit attaches itself to behavior that's already automated, rather than requiring you to build a cue from scratch. You can chain multiple habits together this way, creating a consistent sequential ritual. Environment is stronger than willpower. Clear argues that environment is a far more powerful driver of behavior than motivation or willpower. People often mistakenly believe their habits are purely a product of internal character and personality, but behavior is actually shaped heavily by physical and social context. The practical takeaway: designing your environment matters more than trying harder. It's far more effective to move fruit to a visible spot on the counter than to rely on willpower to resist chips. Clear advises making cues for good habits obvious and accessible, and removing or hiding cues for bad habits. He then introduces the idea of one space, one use. When each physical space has a clear association with one type of activity, the kitchen is only for eating, the bed is only for sleeping, it's easier for the brain to link specific cues to specific behavior without cross-contamination. A major problem in modern life, especially with phones and laptops, is that the same space gets used for dozens of different, often conflicting activities, which dilutes the strength of cues. Social contagion of habits. Clear also discusses how habits are contagious, shaped by the culture and groups we belong to. We tend to imitate the habits of three groups: the close, family, friends; the many, the tribe we belong to; and the powerful, high-status people we look up to and want to emulate. This is rooted in evolutionary psychology. Belonging to a group was historically a matter of survival, so we unconsciously absorb the norms of whatever group we're part of. Breaking the cue for bad habits. Toward the end of Part 2, Clear flips the first law to explain how to use it to break bad habits: make the cues invisible. This means deliberately altering your environment, removing triggers for unwanted behavior from sight and easy access, whether that's social media apps on your phone, snacks left out at home, or cigarettes kept somewhere visible. Part 3, the second law: make it attractive. Part 3 covers the science of craving and dopamine, what turns a simple cue into genuine desire for action. The science of craving and dopamine. Clear explains that it isn't the reward itself that drives us to act, it's the anticipation of the reward. The brain releases dopamine not when we receive pleasure, but when we expect it. This mechanism is called the dopamine-driven feedback loop. A spike in dopamine at the mere thought of a reward is what pushes us toward action, not the reward itself. This explains why anticipation often feels stronger than the experience itself. Looking forward to a party can be more exciting than the party. Anticipating a purchase can feel better than owning the item. Slot machines, social media, and video games are specifically engineered around this mechanism. They create a constant sense of possible reward, keeping attention locked in through the craving cycle. The practical takeaway: if you want a habit to stick, you need to learn to associate it with a sense of anticipated pleasure, to make the habit itself an object of desire, rather than just a necessary chore. Temptation bundling. Here Clear introduces temptation bundling, pairing an action you need to do with an action you want to do. The formula: after, habit I need, I will, habit I want. Example: only watching your favorite show while on the exercise bike. This way, a less appealing action borrows dopamine from the action it's linked to, and motivation to follow through increases. The role of culture and social norms. Clear explores in depth why habits embraced by our social group are so magnetic. Humans are social creatures, and from an evolutionary standpoint, belonging to a tribe was a matter of survival. So we unconsciously copy the behavior of people around us, especially those we consider similar to ourselves, those whose status we envy, or those we respect. The practical advice that follows: surround yourself with people for whom your desired behavior is the norm. If you want to run in the mornings, join a running club. If you want to read more, surround yourself with readers. A habit becomes more attractive when it's a way to fit into a group, rather than a way to stand apart from it. Reprogramming how you perceive a habit. Clear introduces an important idea: our habits are largely shaped by how we mentally frame them, by the associations and beliefs attached to them. The same action, working out, eating healthy, can be perceived either as a deprivation and an obligation, or as an opportunity and a privilege. He uses the example of quitting smoking. People quit more successfully not when they think, I can't have a cigarette, but when they rewrite the internal story, I don't need cigarettes to feel good, instead of, I have to suffer through not smoking. The same principle applies to any habit. Shifting the internal narrative from I have to I get to makes the behavior far more appealing. A practical method here is the motivation ritual, creating a small ritual before a difficult action, one the brain learns to associate with pleasure and readiness rather than the heaviness of the task itself. The flip side, make it unattractive. As with the other laws, Clear closes by covering the reverse application. To break a bad habit, make it unattractive. The practical method: write out all the negative consequences of the bad habit and reframe its perceived benefits. For instance, instead of "smoking helps me relax," recognize that smoking creates the anxiety that nicotine then temporarily relieves, meaning the habit doesn't solve the problem, it manufactures it. Part 4, the third law: make it easy. Part 4 shifts the focus from motivation to convenience, explaining why ease of execution, not willpower, ultimately determines whether a habit sticks. Less is more, the law of least effort. Clear opens with a core principle: humans naturally follow the law of least effort. Of all the available options, we instinctively gravitate toward whichever requires the least energy. So the most reliable way to build a habit is to make it as simple and convenient as possible, stripping away as much friction as you can from the path to action. He introduces the concept of points of friction. The more steps, effort, or obstacles stand between you and an action, the less likely the habit is to stick. Conversely, reducing friction by even one small step, like laying out your gym clothes by the bed the night before, significantly increases the odds you'll follow through. The 2-minute rule. One of the book's most well-known tools is the 2-minute rule. Scale any new habit down to a version that takes 2 minutes or less. For example, read every night before bed becomes read 1 page, do 30 push-ups becomes put on my workout clothes. The point isn't to stay at the 2-minute level forever, it's to master the ritual of showing up. Appearing at the gym or opening the book is the real hurdle. Once you clear that first step, the activity often naturally continues longer than planned. Clear calls this creating a gateway habit, one that opens the door to more demanding behavior down the line. Automating decisions. Clear introduces the concept of decision points, moments throughout the day where we choose whether to follow the habit or veer off course. The more of these forks in the road a person encounters, the higher the risk of slipping. An effective strategy, then, is to reduce the number of decisions through a pre-designed environment and routine: laying out clothes the night before, keeping running shoes by the door, pre-portioning healthy food. All of this reduces the moments where willpower might fail. Using technology to ease good habits. Clear also discusses how modern technology and commercial tools can lower friction for good habits: automatic savings transfers, habit tracking apps, pre-ordered healthy meals. Using external systems and structures reduces the burden on willpower and makes the right behavior the default behavior. The flip side: make it difficult. As with the previous laws, Clear covers the reverse application. To break a bad habit, increase the friction standing in its way. Examples: deleting an app from your phone's home screen, storing the TV in a closet instead of the center of the room, removing batteries from the remote. The more steps and effort a behavior requires, the less likely you are to perform it on autopilot. Commitment devices. Clear also introduces the concept of a commitment device, a way of locking in your future behavior through a decision made in the present. Examples include apps that block social media for a set period, or a prepaid, non-refundable gym membership. These mechanisms make the bad choice physically or financially difficult before temptation even has a chance to arise. Part 5, the fourth law: make it satisfying. Part 5 covers the final of the 4 laws, and it's the one responsible for the most important piece of the puzzle: making a habit stick for the long run. The rule of immediate reward. Clear opens with a core principle: what gets rewarded immediately gets repeated, what gets punished immediately gets avoided. Our brains respond far more strongly to instant consequences than to distant ones. The problem with most good habits is that their costs are felt immediately: the fatigue of a workout, the discomfort of skipping dessert, while the reward, health, fitness, arrives months or years later. Bad habits work in reverse: the pleasure is instant, the taste of a cigarette, the ease of scrolling, while the costs are delayed, illness, wasted time. This leads to the key practical task: you need to add immediate satisfaction to good habits, and immediate unpleasant consequences to bad ones. Making good habits immediately satisfying. Clear offers several tools. Reinforcement. After completing a beneficial habit, give yourself a small, immediate reward, but one that doesn't conflict with the identity you're trying to build. For example, not eating cake after a workout, but allowing yourself a relaxed evening with a favorite show. Visual measures of progress, habit trackers, calendars with marked off days. The simple act of visually confirming progress gives the brain an immediate sense of satisfaction and motivates you not to break the chain of check marks. Habit tracking, benefits and pitfalls. Clear examines the benefits of habit tracking in detail. It provides an obvious cue, a reminder to act, creates intrinsic motivation, seeing progress feels good, and serves as an immediate reward for the completed action. But he also warns of the risks of over-relying on tracking. People sometimes become fixated on the tracking itself rather than the substance of the habit. Checking the box becomes more important than the actual outcome. If you miss a day, the key rule is, never miss twice in a row. A single slip isn't critical, but two in a row starts forming a new, undesired habit. Accountability partners and contracts. Another tool is the accountability contract, a written or verbal agreement with another person about the consequences of not following through, often involving a financial stake. The social cost of breaking a commitment, embarrassment in front of another person, losing money, adds an immediate punishment for skipping the habit, which helps counterbalance the delayed costs of bad behavior. The flip side, make it unsatisfying. As with the previous laws, there's a mirrored application for breaking bad habits. Make the immediate consequences of the bad habit unpleasant. For example, an accountability partner you owe a penalty to if you slip, or a public commitment made in front of others, both create immediate social or financial pain that outweighs the instant pleasure of the bad behavior.